welcome everybody. We're going to start the evening session of the East York Budget Subcommittee, public consultations. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Are there any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we're going to begin. I want to first of all welcome all the members of the public to the evening session of the East York Subcommittee of the Budget Committee. Tonight we're here to listen to you, the residents of East York or the city, depending on where you come from, on your concerns, considerations, ideas, comments about this 2016 budget. I'm Councillor Gary Crawford. I'm the budget chair. We have Councillor Mike Layton, Councillor Carroll, Councillor Davis, and Councillor Fragidakis. The three of us are part of the budget committee or the budget subcommittee, so we'll be actually the ones making recommendations through the budget committee process. That will be going from here at budget committee on, I believe, starting Monday and the week after, going on to executive, and then from there it'll be going to full council on February 18th. So the decisions that we make are quite important. Other than we'll give the recommendations, and it'll follow its course in the process. We have been listening, I guess, over the last month to all the divisions, agencies, boards, and departments all across the city. So we've had an opportunity to hear the requests from all the different agencies on what their budget submissions are. And now we're in a point where we're looking to hear the public. Again, which are you. We have had meetings at all the civic centers in the city, as along with City Hall. So your opinions are incredibly important to us, as they will form part of the basis on the decision making that we'll actually be taking part, again, starting on Monday, and how we sort of form what will end up becoming the city budget for 2016. So again, as I said, incredibly important. I'm glad you're here to speak to us. What we'll be doing, we have a list of deputants who have registered or pre-registered to speak tonight. And if there's anybody in the audience who has not pre-registered, would like to speak, just see the clerks just over here. And you will have 5 minutes to speak to the committee and councillors, of course. We will be timing. I will just give you a little nudge or an indication about 15 or 5 seconds before the 5 minutes is up, just to let you know to wrap up so we can be fair with everybody else. After that time, any of the councillors up here may have questions. So we could ask you questions up to 5 minutes. So that's the process. Again, we're here to listen to you, and we look forward to having an interesting dialogue over the next little while. So to begin, we're going to have the first speaker, which is Heather Kelly from the Royal Conservatory. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you very much, councillors and committee members. Okay. Do we get a cue or just start? Okay. So my name is Heather Kelly. I am a fellow of the Toronto Arts Council's Cultural Leaders Lab, the founder and director of the Bloor Street Culture Corridor, the Director of Marketing for the Royal Conservatory's Concerts Division, and I work with the Ryerson Image Centre, Contact Festival, and other arts organizations throughout the city. I'm here because I want to thank you for the city's ongoing arts funding and for the increased support to the Toronto Arts Council in recent years. And I'd like to ask that you please uphold City Council's commitment to increasing arts investment to reach $25 per capita by next year, and therefore to please implement the $5 million increase in arts investment required this year. I moved to Toronto 20 years ago solely and specifically for the arts industry here, not as an artist, but as an arts sector worker. There's more than 174,000 people in Toronto who, like me, rely on the arts sector for our livelihood. And so many more people, more than 70% of our city's population, who recognize the arts to be essential to the vitality, diversity, neighborhoods, tourism, and economic well-being of our city. So I'd just like to let you know how the recent increases to the Toronto Arts Council funding have affected me and my work. It's helped me to connect Torontonians with the Bloor Street Culture Corridor, thanks to a grant from the TAC's new Open Doors program. The Bloor Street Culture Corridor is a creative cluster where 19 arts and culture organizations are working in partnership. Now this includes Alliance Française, the Badichoux Museum, Bloor Hot Dog Cinema, Gardner Museum, Istituto Italiano, the Miles Nadal Jewish Community Center, the Native Canadian Center of Toronto, Taffel Music, the ROM, the Royal Conservatory, and 9 more arts organizations. Every year, more than 3 million people come to our destinations, and together, the Bloor Street Culture Corridor generates more than $629 million in economic impact each year. Now, that's just 1.5 kilometers of arts and culture within our whole city. The Toronto Arts Council funding is also fostering cultural leadership in this city. I'm so fortunate to be one of the inaugural fellows of the new Cultural Leaders Lab that the Toronto Arts Council and Banff Centre developed last year to cultivate an extremely valuable working group of arts leaders and innovators in the City of Toronto. This group will have significant positive impact in Toronto's arts industry, and we've been brought together thanks to the new funding that's enabled the Toronto Arts Council to create important programs that address Toronto's arts sector needs. The Royal Conservatory of Music has impact in every ward in this city. And in the concerts division where I work, we started to receive operational funding support just as of our last concert season. We present more than 100 concerts every year in Kerner Hall and our 2 other concert halls. And we've had the joy of presenting more than 3,000 Toronto musicians so far, along with their international peers. Now, as a resident who lives just on the next block, a block from here, I'd also like to applaud the creation of East End Arts. And I'm happy to be attending a meeting next week about the new multi-use art space in this area of the city as well. I'd just like to emphasize the value of arts funding before I end. We know that 4 times more tourists come to Toronto for culture than for sports, and that these cultural tourists outspend other visitors 2 to 1, and that arts and culture contributes more than $11 billion to Toronto's GDP each year. The intangible benefits are harder to measure, but also have important effects on our city. Our arts and culture organizations are places for people to explore new ideas and other cultures, to share, to learn, to have creativity nurtured, to dialogue, to see things differently, and to share meaningful experiences with friends and family. Investment in the arts helps Toronto to attract business and tourists, to engage our newcomers and our young people, to employ artists and art sector professionals, and to make our neighborhoods and communities vibrant. This year's commitment to a $5 million increase in arts funding will bring huge benefits to the entire city. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Any questions? Nope, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next will be Maureen Adams.
Good evening. I'm also a resident of this neighborhood, but I'm here in the capacity of my employment at YWCA Toronto. Our association serves 11,000 women and girls in 30 programs in 12 locations and communities all across the city of Toronto. We've had a long and proud history with the city of Toronto, particularly in providing housing for women. Our housing portfolio itself includes 104 emergency shelter and violence against women beds, 12 units of transitional housing, and 550 units of permanent affordable housing. Working collaboratively with the city and other levels of government, we provide community and a place to call home for over 1,500 marginalized and disadvantaged women. But there is still much to be done, as you all know, because we continue to be challenged with over 90,000 households on the waiting list for affordable housing. It was about this time a year ago that YWCA Toronto held consultations with our tenants about how to eradicate poverty in Toronto. They compiled a list of recommendations that were forwarded to the city as part of its outreach to people who had lived experience of poverty for the poverty reduction strategy. And I think it's important to say they participated in good faith, with the hope that their voices would be heard and that positive change was soon on the way, because many of them had been living in poverty for some time. Women told us about the difficulty of finding full-time employment. Many are working 2 part-time jobs or on short-term contracts. Most have no guaranteed hours of work, no benefits, no sick time. They also told us that finding affordable childcare when they need it is next to impossible. Women need more childcare subsidies, more local spaces, and flexible hours of operation to deal with the new work schedules that women are working today, particularly if they're precariously employed in multiple jobs. We heard from them that a safe and secure home at YWCA Toronto has transferred their lives and the lives of their children, and that they want this same opportunity for all women. They want to ensure that women are never forced to stay in violent relationships because they cannot afford to leave, or be made to make a terrible choice about whether they will feed their kids or pay their rent. These are too frequently the real lived experiences of many women in Toronto. When the poverty reduction strategy was released, we saw that our tenants' voices were reflected and represented, and that the recommendations that they put forward were key components of the strategy. We congratulate the city for that, for listening to the voices of those who've lived with poverty, and for passing the strategy with the unanimous support. However, as we all know, if the strategy is not adequately funded, it cannot be implemented. This would be a tragedy and an enormous setback to addressing inequality in our city. And put quite simply, we can't afford to wait for action. We urge this committee and members of council to ensure that the budget includes the funding necessary to reduce poverty. This is why we joined over 50 civic leaders in calling on City Council to invest $75 million to begin making real progress on core priorities. Priorities such as childcare, shelter and supportive housing, and affordable rent for 7,000 households at risk of homelessness. We know what this means for council. We know it means the introduction of new revenue generating tools, and we know that we've followed the deputations and all the work that's going on in this area, and we know that various proposals have been put forward as to how this revenue could be generated. So we know there's a strong social and economic case for investing in poverty reduction. For example, our own charitable sector, in our case, the YWCA Toronto, leveraged city funding with private sector donors and volunteers and developed 300 units of affordable housing on Elm Street in downtown Toronto. All levels of government provided $38 million of the $80 million that cost. Our organization raised $15 million and carried a mortgage of $27. So we actually put the majority of money into that housing. It wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't had early support, including from the City of Toronto.
Have to wrap up, please.
Okay. I guess my last thing would say, my last point would say is that the City of Toronto Act gives you the power to make new revenue tools. The people that we work with, if they were here, would say they want to contribute, they want stronger families, neighborhoods, and communities, and they urge you to put the funding forward to make the poverty reduction strategy work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to ask you, maybe you can show me later about the research around flexible childcare, because I know that part-time childcare is almost impossible to find, and maybe you could share some information.
Well, I wouldn't
with me
mind
later.
just telling you one quick comment about that. The women in precarious employment who are in our affordable housing, the gain they make from being in affordable housing is lost because of the cost of childcare.
Yes.
If they're in precarious employment and working part-time in one job, they're not eligible.
Yes.
So they're trying to work other hours and on the weekend, and that's when childcare is not available, even if they were working full-time.
Yes,
It's a
you're
huge
absolutely
problem.
right. Because the minimum number of hours required to get a full-time subsidy, often women can't achieve that, yeah.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank-
it is.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor Layton. That's a quick question.
Thank you very much. In the unfunded column of our budget, it's kind of different this year that we have a budget that's being proposed, even though there's a little shortfall,
Yeah.
little tens of million dollar shortfall. The unfunded column of the ledger as well. And in that unfunded column, under poverty reduction, is the purchase of service rate increases. How critical is that to the operation of shelters to ensure that we're increasing? It's an inflationary increase of 2%, but how critical is that to the operation of?
Of the shelters that we're operating? I would say the biggest challenge we have with the shelters that we're operating are the youth shelters, because they're on a per diem, and they don't in any way cover the cost of operating the shelter.
So the last per diem rate increase was in 2014.
That's right.
So we're
So we,
2
in our
years behind.
shelter, our youth shelter, we get about $60, a per diem of $60, and it cost us about $85 a day. So we have that gap all of the time on the youth shelter side.
any idea what your inflationary rate, like what is your to deliver the same level of service next year over this year,
Yeah.
what that will cost, would cost you?
We're just in our budget discussions
Oh, so
at the
are we.
at the association right now on that issue. Here's what I would say: we are hoping for our youth shelter that the per diem would increase by the city from $60 to $66, and that's still well below what our actual operating cost is to run the shelter. And as you know, if the shelter is in any way vacant, and there's an empty bed, you don't actually get paid on a per diem basis like you would with a women's shelter where you get block funding.
Thank you, Alderman. Councillor.
I was getting
Yeah.
some financial advice.
Yeah.
That sadly, the rate at which we have calculated inflation for the purpose of this budget wouldn't bring you to $66. It would bring you to $61.60.
Right.
$61.20.
Right.
Just so.
Yeah, so we have to fundraise that extra
Yep.
money in order to try to provide the same level of service in our youth shelter that we would provide in our violence against women shelter,
And-
because the funding model is different.
And I thank you for all the hard work you go to
Oh,
make
thank
that
you.
shortfall
Yeah,
this
thank you.
year.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes. Quick one.
Just
Yep.
this,
One more.
you have not had an inflationary factor increase. You didn't have one last year either in 2015, it looks like. Is that
I
true?
don't think so.
Okay, so it's been 2 years of inflation you've fallen behind.
Well, and in some areas of provincial funding, if you're in the broad public sector, there's also been a freeze in some areas as well. So all of us in the sector are trying different ways to make up those gaps without reducing services. And most of us are lean now. We've taken as much out as we can without having an impact on services.
And we have shelter standards you have to meet.
Yes, you do. We do, yeah.
And when those shelter standards were introduced,
Mhm.
I presume there were cost impacts of those. Were there?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Juanita Downey. Welcome.
Thank you. By the way, my name is Janita, not Juanita.
I apologize, Janita.
The spelling. Good evening, counselors and guests. My name is Janita Downey, a volunteer. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of Secord Public School Breakfast Club, Snack and Lunch Program, and D.A. Morrison Middle School Breakfast Club in Ward 31 of East York. We serve the following at each school or at one of the schools: foods, pancakes, scrambled eggs, toast and English muffins, pizza, grilled cheese, bagel and cream cheese, French toast, egg McMuffin, cereal, oatmeal. And they're all fresh. We make them ourselves. The fruit is watermelon, honeydew, cantaloupe, grapes, pineapple, strawberries, oranges, bananas, and apples. The drinks are milk, water, juice, apple, and oranges. Orange. And sometime on Fridays at D.A. Morrison, we have smoothies. The menus include breakfast, egg McMuffin, the main course, fruit. We have 8 servings of fruit, or fruit salad, milk, juice, and or water. The lunch program at Secord School is chili and rice, chili and rice with cheese, a roll, and fruit. That's 5 kinds of fruits. A number of students we serve from grades 1 to 8 at each school from Secord, an average of 60 to 80 a day. D.A. Morrison, average of 80 to 60 daily. These programs are universal, all is welcome. That comes in to eat. Breakfast Club is funded by RE/MAX Realty Agency, and the snack and lunch program is funded by the City of Toronto and others. The volunteers at the Breakfast Club is from RE/MAX, LePage Realty Agents, and the community. And our lunch program is have volunteers from the community, parents, and principals, believe it. The benefits to the students are they learn to like eating fruits and vegetables, experience different foods for the first time, learn to taste the difference between healthy and junk food, be more alert in class, put learned social skills into practice, and finally, learn to build friendships. We see daily all of the above happening in both schools. Kids are coming to the Breakfast Club and having eggs or honeydew for the first time, believe it or not. They are asking or looking to see what's cooking. There is clapping with joy when spaghetti, beans, and rice, or tuna and rice are on the menu. Spaghetti and pizza is an everyone is on the lunch program on that particular day, or most of our hot lunches, the youngsters, they just love it. We just introduced tofu to our cabbage and rice, and it's a keeper. Their manners are on display with please and thank you. These are just a few of the responses we get each day. The importance of these programs in areas like ours changes as new families move into the community. We know that each child is different and the need is different, but they all need food and having it provided to them. Sometimes encouragement to try something different is another big answer to some of the problems, especially in a safe environment like school. Your continued support and in being visionaries of new initiatives to build on what already is in place in each school, I invite you to come out and talk with the principals, coordinators, and those who will help you find out how you can support our students at Secord and D.A. Morrison schools. Our challenges are the uncertainty of continued funding, of not being necessary in the schools, regardless of the needs identified in the areas. I would like to take this time to thank you, City of Toronto, again for your financial support, contribution, for listening and hopefully seeing what we see daily, growing minds of the future, our future too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Layton has a question.
Oh, you
Yes.
okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Downey. I was hoping to have, we had a couple of speakers around student nutrition earlier, and I had tried to highlight a point around the proposed but unfunded inflationary increase to your food costs. Cost of food is going up. right?
True.
So let me talk you through a scenario, and I'm just curious if this concerns you.
Okay.
So in 2011, a pound of apples was $3.35. In 2015, that same pound of apples was $4.12, which at a year by, it's a 20% increase roughly. But year over year, that's about 5%.
Right.
Let's look to 2020. There'll still be hungry kids in 2020. We want to feed those hungry minds. In 2020, that bag of apples, if we go by the 5% increase every year, will cost $5.15. So the proposal that we have here is a 1.3% increase every year, when we know the cost of food is going up at 5% every year. So does it concern you, to put it in a form of a question, does it concern you that in 2020, if we stick to us increasing by 1.4%, 1.3%, but inflation's at 4.5%, that what you could buy now, 18 apples for $10, you'd actually only be able to afford, that same $10 will only buy you 11 apples, and because we're giving less, you'd only be able to get 8 apples.
Right.
So you're going to have almost half the amount of food if we don't continuously increase at a higher rate. Does that give you some concern? Like, is there enough funds there to absorb this rather significant increase in the cost of food?
I would think that if the funds are not there initially, when you're thinking about children, our kids, I would think that you would take a little bit more extra thought in how you're going to fund our future. Because this is our future. When you talk about children, whether they're going to have enough to eat, because we don't know the dynamics of their household. So if we're not thinking about on that aspect of our kids having enough food to learn in class, and we would love to see them aspire to the best of their ability. If they do not have a full stomach or even a 3/4 of their stomach full, they cannot think properly. So when you're making your budget plans in regards to our children, I would think that you would take that in account as when you start putting dollar signs on it. I'm not an expert. I'm just a volunteer who know that children thrive on a full stomach. And even if it's not English muffins, there's fruit and there's vegetables. From my experience in working with the children, knowing that for me, I'm a grandmother, I'm a mother, and I know that my daughter and my grandchild, they had to learn how to like vegetables. But if you don't have vegetables, you cannot learn to eat them or to like them. I could tell you stories that I have seen in my own eyes at the schools, where kids who would come even for breakfast, and sometimes we would provide carrots, and they would eat the carrots. And sometimes they would have pineapple, and they say, "Oh, I don't like pineapple." But we would encourage them to eat, just to taste it. And they go out there and say, "Oh, this is so good, I'm coming back." And believe me, when you provide an opportunity for children to experience a new way of thinking about what they put into their bodies and what really comes out, and that's a productive mind, and a new way of thinking about themselves, we as grown-ups benefit from it.
Thank you very much.
Okay? Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Janita, thank you very much for coming and for all you do in our community. How many children are in the D.A. Morrison program? Because that's new. Do you know? Or kids, they're not children, they're
Yeah, they're
older.
preteens.
Yes.
They're preteens. Yes, the tweens. And I would say the 60 to 80
Okay.
is a fair amount, but it depends on the day. As this week and the week last week, because of the cold, a lot more came in.
Right.
And believe it or not, they didn't realize that we had a breakfast program. So we added more kids to the breakfast program because of the cold. So we have to increase what we were cooking
Okay, thank
in
you.
order to accommodate that.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Thanks.
Next is
Thank you.
Audra Morgan.
Good evening. My name is Audra Morgan, and I'm one of the vice principals at Valley Park Middle School in Ward number 26. Valley Park straddles two inner-city communities, Thorncliffe and Fleming Park. Thorncliffe Park, Gateway, and Grenoble Public Schools feed into our middle school. Families in these areas are poor, and we have a number of refugee families in our school community. For over 10 years, Valley Park has served our students breakfast, a morning meal, and lunch through funding from the province, the city, and the Toronto Real Estate Board. On a daily basis, we are able to serve a healthy snack or lunch to at least 450 students, which is only half of our school at a time. We are also able to accommodate both religious and food restrictions to our diverse group of students with help from Food Share and TDSB Nutrition Services. We are happy to be able to give our students something to eat at school daily and also help them to make better food choices through modeling and hands-on learning. Teachers, students, and a small number of parents, volunteers, help to prepare the various menus for our students. We especially have a core group of students in the morning who are eager to come for breakfast. For these students, many of them refugees, breakfast time has become a happy place where they can meet one another, make new friends, and try different things to eat like French toast with apples, different types of fruit salad, and tortilla wraps. The tortilla wraps actually amuse them. This way of socializing and learning through doing is something we want to continue as much as possible. However, it is a challenge to deliver these three programs to our school community. A part of the program is asking parents to donate money to the school. But asking our parents for just $5 per month is often beyond their means. Local businesses contribute money as well, but when all of the charities and agencies in the neighborhood ask for money from the same sources, eventually there is no more money to give. This results in us having to decrease the amount or frequency of food we give to our students to still try and give everyone something to eat. We'd much rather be trying to give each student food daily, and we are trying to do so because we know we are sometimes the only reliable source of food they have. While we thank the city and its partners for the funding we do receive, we would appreciate any increase in funding to the program that could be provided. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Vasil Alexiou.
Good evening, councilors. Sometimes I don't know where to start or where to finish. My name is Vasil Alexiou. I've been in this neighborhood for close to 70 years. I've been an all-city employee. And this is not the first time the city's been on hot water, or the second time or third time. When June Oron was mayor, we took 10 days off without pay. And we're still living to tell. When Bob Ray was prime minister, we took another 10 days. No questions asked. The problem I know that you guys have starts with you, the councilors. You don't have enough nerve to stick to the union, because our union, the president before used to be a worker like us. Now the president of that union makes over $100,000. This money comes from the taxpayers, okay? The police, ambulance, firemen, all these services, they're doing a good job, and in a lot of cases they're overdoing it. One day I was coming with my bike on Woodbine and Danford. I see 5 cruisers, 3 fire trucks, 2 ambulances. And one guy was wiping his ambulance. I said, what's going on? Oh, he said, some old guy fell down and broke his hip. And I said, does it take 5 cruisers and all this? And you're trying to tell me you're not abusing the work? Oh, he says, they tell us to come, we come. This is, you guys, you should focus, especially you, Shirley. You should focus on this really, really close. A couple of days ago, there was a shooting in Scarborough. There were 11 cruisers. I stopped to count them. 11 cruisers, which is the case was solved. That's abusing of power and misleading the public. Last night was something on the expressway. For one lousy bullet, they stopped the traffic, which was polluting the air for hours and hours and hours. Can these cops take a picture and say, okay, let the traffic go? Oh, no. Nobody can tell us because somebody gave us a gun, okay? This is the biggest problem so far. Like I said, starts number 1 from the counselors, because you guys create the problems. I noticed this lady I was just talking to, she can go to get some fresh fruit from the bus terminal, practically on 0 cost. But you guys, you are so easy to throw people's money away and to talk on television and CP24 and so on and so forth. And who CP selects to talk to? I'm not going to call them dummies, the most dummy counselors. CP will go handle the microphone to them. Like I said, problem. Okay, the gap when I was working was between management and labor was this big. Now the gap is I don't know how many miles, which is, let's say if you make $100,000 and I make $10,000 and we get 1%, guess who goes up and up and up? The $100,000 guy. But you guys never cut some of that. Or the sunshine lease. You're all so happy, oh my God, we got so much sunshine lease, you know, over $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. You think these people, they're going to go look for a job in Detroit? They're not going to go to Detroit. They should take pay cut 10, 15 to 20%, all these sunshine boys. I've been down in the city how many times? And that's all they do, keep opening and closing the doors. You can cut billions of dollars down. Never mind increases and this and that. It's so easy. I came from an old country with nothing, and today, thanks God, I'm doing much better than anybody. Why? Because I don't buy the meat, the one is $18 a pound. I buy the one is $3 a pound, because I know how to cook it, okay? Now speaking about the welfare, I manage this place now. Each time I go in there, smells on marijuana, stinks like hell. We feel sorry for these homeless people because they want to drive expensive cars, marijuana, and go for breakfast every day. And guys like Brother Layton there, oh yeah, we're going to do something about it. You're going to do nothing about it, okay?
Thank you, sir.
cannot lead the horse to the water and make them drink it.
Your 5 minutes is up. Thank you.
Who said that?
I did.
Oh,
Chair, no, you've used up your 5 minutes.
I thank you very much.
Thank you.
But like I said, I probably said a little bit too much, maybe not enough. But think about it, especially you, Shirley. When you go on that radio, believe you me,
Thank you.
just because people vote for you, that doesn't mean you're somebody.
Thank you. Next,
I do have a question for you, since
Oh.
you've mentioned my name a number of times, so maybe you want to stay there. Yeah. Just one question, because you've raised a very good point that I've tried at the police board, and I'm really happy to hear a member of the community actually saying that we should go down that road. And that is the issue of taking the lowest paid people and giving them a percentage increase, and then saying to the highest people, your raise is the same percentage, and
That's right.
making that gap. I don't know if you're aware, but at the city for a number of years now, we actually have addressed that with our senior staff. That has never been addressed at the police services. And that is something I'm fighting for right now. So you are the first person in the community I've heard understands that that needs to be done and that we need to do it, particularly at the police. I want to thank you for making that comment publicly.
Yes. Because
Thank
I've
you.
been on the road for 4 years. I know
Yeah.
everybody, how they breathe and so on and so
Mayor
forth.
Tory, who's also on the board, was here this afternoon. I'm going to tell him that you brought it up, that the community would understand that that needs to be done.
Will
Thank
I be
you.
able to see some progress there?
Absolutely,
They're working on
absolutely.
it.
You're backing me up now.
Okay.
Thank you. Next is Vanessa Jacobs.
Got my water.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Vanessa Jacobs, and I'm here because I'd like to discuss the Parkside Preschool Program. Okay. Hi. So I've lived at Woodbine and Cosburn for about 17 years. Parkside School is my home school for my children. Both my children attend the daycare. My son has benefited the most from the daycare, as he started there when he was 2.5. It is a fabulous program. It really, honestly, is an amazing program. They have done wonderful from it. When he started school this year, he was in a class with 6 other children from his daycare, and he just moved in. He just up and moved in. He didn't have any issues. The only issue he had was the day that I dropped him off. After I stopped dropping him off, he was fine. He had no problems because he was, why is she dropping me off here? So it's an amazing program. I think it would be an absolute shame if you closed the preschool program, because I think that we need help. We need more daycare in our neighborhood. I don't know if anybody is aware of this, but there are only 2 daycares in my neighborhood. And then there's ARC program. There's only two daycares in my actual space. And there are a lot of new families. It's hard to get a subsidized space or a subsidized daycare, which Parkside and Plains Road are. And I think it's just a shame. I think it's a shame if they want to do that. I'm hoping that you don't, because as I said again, it is a good program. And if there's anything else that we can do to help, just please let us know. Oh, you're very welcome.
Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Davis.
So one of the things I've been thinking about and talking to some people about is looking at whether or not to help build a more sustainable program and to reflect the direction the province is going, which is to build infant, toddler, or preschool programs. If we did that at Parkside and started with younger age groups, even at toddlers that fed into preschool, that fed into school age, do you think that would help make that program more sustainable?
I think it probably would. I mean, the thing is, Parkside is a tiny school that probably nobody notices.
Yes.
In that case, I mean, it's fabulous because, you know, everybody knows the children that are there. I don't understand why we're taking daycare away when we have such a huge apartment building right next to us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand it. I think that any childcare is good childcare. I mean, we're trying. We're supposed to be filling up and adding stuff to everything, and I don't quite know why we're starting to take things away.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe just more, what's the word I'm looking for? I think maybe people need to know about it, just know in general about it.
Right.
But it's a shame that there's only 2 in that neighborhood. I mean, especially subsidized. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me
Thank
speak
you
to
for coming.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Kara Melby. Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Kara Melby. I live in East York. I'm concerned about spending on transit. Specifically, the decision to spend $3.5 billion for 3 subway stops instead of the province fully funding 7 LRT stops. Plus, we're having to spend $75 million on penalties to cancel the LRT, and we're getting nothing for that. And that would go a long way to covering the $90 million shortfall that you're aware of today. So I'm hoping that council will please reconsider that decision. It's not too late. That's all I wanted to say.
Quick and concise. Councillor Carroll had a question.
So thank you for coming. It's not just a matter of it being not too late. We're kind of in a different world now, and I don't know if people noticed it, but what we learned yesterday when the Prime Minister visited City Hall, and the week before when the Toronto caucus members came, is while the federal government wants to fund our transit projects, they now need us to move. We can't ask them to fund a line that probably won't be finished being studied and spec'd out and ready to build for 5 to 7 years. They want to start building something in the next 12 months. And the longer line that you described actually was completely studied, spec'd out. The funds are sitting in a reserve account right now, and the tender was actually drafted and ready to be served up by Metrolinx. Are you asking us to go to Metrolinx and say we'd like to reconsider that project in light of the current financial circumstances and the new message we're receiving from the federal government? Is that what you're asking us to do?
Sounds good to me. I'm asking you not to spend $3.5 billion on 3 stops and have a fully funded system that gets us 7 stops. It's actually faster.
I'm all for the longer line. Thank you so much for coming.
I've been
Thank
hearing
you.
all day about these great funding ideas and funding requests. There's an awful lot of money needed for kids' food, and it seems like an awful waste of money.
Thank you.
Now's the time is right to take another decision and look at this.
Thank you. Councillor Fragedakis had a question.
Thank you.
Thanks for your concise presentation. I was wondering, do you think we should build the downtown relief line?
It makes sense to me. I'm really not an expert on this. This what I just read is what's stuck in my craw for the past year or so, year and a half since the decision was made. But certainly there needs to be some relief for the traffic crush downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, that was the last speaker on our list. Is there anybody else in the audience that wish to speak at all? Great. Well, thank you very much for coming out and speaking, of course, listening to some of the dialogue tonight. We just have one more procedural motion before we finish. That the Budget Subcommittee for City Hall, Scarborough Civic Center, and East York Civic Center consultation receive for information the public presentations and communications submitted by members of the public. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. We are adjourned for the evening. Thank you.